We have asked Eden and Chris and Motoki to speak about the opportunity for commercial development in each of their areas of expertise, and we're going to start with Eden. So, please.
Sure. Is there a timer running? No timer?
There will be a 10-minute timer on.
10-minute timer, that's way too long. So I have 10 points.
Speak for 5 is fine.
Exactly.
Give us more time.
So I thought I have the best job in the world, right? So I'm a venture capitalist. I have $150 million to give talented people. And then we had Chris, Jeff, and I had a discussion about DARPA, right? And DARPA seems to have the better job in the world, right? Because I get to coach people, I get to help them do their ideas, but they actually have the ideas. Though I do have the upside if the idea is making money while they don't. So,
very true.
I think it's worthwhile discussing what's kind of the breakdown between government responsibility, academia responsibility, and the commercial sector. Right? Just yesterday was published that Andy Rubin is the founder of Android. He ran Android. He made it 80% of the smartphone market worldwide, and he's now building robots for Google. Right? He's taking it to the next level, smart robots. So yesterday they disclosed that they actually bought 7 different companies quietly in order to build those kind of robots. So that's the side of kind of the private sector, but obviously academia, government have significant resources, and the breakdown of superhumans, who does that research and who provides the capabilities is an interesting question in general. So a bit about the private sector. As investors, we look for tidal waves. Very rarely we create the tidal wave, almost never, right? But once a tidal wave happens, and the kind of superhuman or augmented humanity or whatever is a tidal wave, and I'll talk about build the ecosystem, or how can we support the ecosystem in order to make it grow faster, right? Because venture capital is very dependent on fast-growing businesses. Specifically around augmented humanity, I think a challenge to think that communications is such a tidal wave within augmented humanity, and what we see generally across many years is that the better communication happens, and it started with, I guess, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago, when there was signaling just with smoke, right? And then it moved on for literature, and then it moved on. And now, if you look at augmented humanity, just the ability of people to communicate better, I would describe that as a step function. And that's why I don't think we see again just a linear change. There are step functions in human evolution, and most of them are around communications and augmented humanity, be it superhuman hearing, or be it that we can communicate better, or that I can get your information in a better way, is a step function that creates the kind of opportunities that venture capital is looking for. So communication creates something called network effects. The thing that every venture capital is looking for is network effects. Network effect means that there is more value. The more people have that, the more value it is for the entirety of the network, right? The easiest thing to look at it, Facebook is useless if you're the only ones on Facebook, right? Right. But in general, anything that has network effects grows exponentially as an opportunity. And then as investors, we look for value chain. In this case, it would be communication/input, going for prediction, what it is that that person needs, and then augmentation. So it could understand that what we need is face recognition. So I want to know who is that person in front of me, and then augmentation would be to display that on Google Glass or the Lumos glasses or whatever, and then that has an output, and the chain goes again, right? So now there is input, communications, and that creates an unfair advantage. Right, so the prediction has the strongest network effect, and we now see initial investments happening you might want, and if that actually is driven faster to your brain through whatever means, that creates unfair advantage. And unfair advantage has an interesting phenomenon, and I think discussing regulation is quite hard if you have rogue nations that would give that to their population. So if you have Iran, China, North Korea, giving their population that unfair advantage of human augmentation, it will create a spiral, a network effect, or a pyramid that I discussed yesterday, in making sure that you also have that unfair advantage. Otherwise, you will not be able to compete with them. But it can also be just in a specific subpopulation within a given country, and that population will have that unfair advantage, and that will trickle down the innovation. So it's not really controllable. Even if you do it on a state level, then other states will try to compete with you, and that will create a driving force for you to need to adopt it. And as looking from the outside as investors, I just don't think it's stoppable in that. And a good example for that would be 3D printing of guns, right? We have guns regulation, but today you can print a gun. You'll only be able to fire once or twice, but who cares, right? When you have a gun and you have a target. So that's highly regulated. Some would say not enough in the US, some would say too much in the US, but regulation is kaput, right? It doesn't matter anymore, really. And the same thing will happen in applications that provide that sort of desired advantage. I'd finish with two things. One, society, so assuming it increases productivity because it provides that unfair advantage, it will speed up the issue of unemployment, right? The more people are productive, the less you need specific people to do certain jobs, then unemployment will rise, and you see the initial parts of that. So that's kind of the downside, which is worth discussing. The upside is higher quality of living. The more productive you are, the more money is throughout the country. And if you saw this morning, Switzerland is voting on giving unconditional salary of $2,800 monthly for people, and that's only available if productivity increases. So in theory, that this augmented humanity can actually create a better wealth society for everyone. So those two pressures, of one side of unfair advantage and the other side creating this strong economy for the wealth of everyone, I think makes it imminent and unstoppable.
And do you want to disclose any investments you've made in this field?
We only publish, so the fund, Aleph is only 4 months old. We only disclose one investment to date, which is around data. A company that is able to monitor all ships worldwide at any given point and understand what they do. So it's not around augmented humanity. But we have 3 other investments that we have not published.
That are along the lines of this communication platform that you've described?
We do like network effects.
Yeah, okay. All right. Chris.
So I'm gonna stand up, and my Spanish brothers and sisters will probably understand. I'm Macedonian, so I need to stand up and move my hands. It's just a Macedonian thing. So
they think you're a bowl of fruit.
That's right, Macedoine.
Right.
Fruit salad. So that last discussion about what Switzerland is doing, and also kind of hearkening back to the discussion about the verticals and the horizontals, and the fact that the augmented human, the discussion, if it's only based on looking at the individual and the individual augmentation and the effect on the individual, then we're missing the story. It's really it's an issue that scales throughout societies. And that's why, I titled what I was going to remark on: superhumanity versus superhuman, 2 divergent paths. I said pretty much where I stood on the topic yesterday. Now I do want to, so we were asked to sort of look into the future, and just a little warning about people who look into the future. You have to be careful about them. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with this painting in the Louvre, but it's called The Fortune Teller. And at first blush, you see this, this young, obviously wealthy young man, and he's having his palm read. But most of the time when somebody's reading your palm, they're looking at the palm, but she's looking at his eyes. Clearly, she's telling his future through some other means. But in reality, what she's really doing is she's taking his ring off of his hand. So fortune tellers have the ability to sort of tell you what you want to hear and then take your money at the same time. So. Now, we were asked to talk a little bit about the themes that we had heard yesterday, and Michelangelo, I think, would have loved the discussion yesterday. Of course, you know, everybody's familiar with this, is the ceiling plus, and he was very cute about the way he did it, is what he was really telling us is that that humanity, the creation of the human, is really what makes humans unique is our brains, right? And he very cleverly hid a brain inside of picture of God. So anyway, in fact, including the corpus callosum, by the way, for those of you neuroscientists in the room. But we were asked also to talk a little bit about sort of our area of expertise, and by hook or by crook, I'm in education and experience, have quite a bit of experience in genomics. Not that I would consider myself an expert. I don't think anybody is right now. The field is exploding so much. But one of the big problems that we have when we talk about genetic enhancements or monkeying around with the human genome to create the superhuman, one of the problems is that we have firmly held beliefs, some people would say sacred beliefs, within the field of genomics about the way the genome operates. And for the last 50 years, we have been trying to find the bad gene, the gene that causes breast cancer, the gene that causes Alzheimer's, the gene that causes this, the gene that causes that, and then attack that gene. And the whole field of personalized medicine has been fixed around this idea that you fix and focus on the bad gene. And what people completely forgot was that, we had this idea foisted on us, some people would say a sacred idea foisted on us, that there was this thing, and we even called it central dogma. We use a religious term to describe it, which is that 1,000 segments of the genome that encode for proteins, which means there's some other thing going on inside the genome that we completely forgot to look for when we started on the Human Genome Project. So just to give you a kind of rough idea of how far off we were, it turns out that only 1.5% of the entire human genome codes for proteins. The other 98.5% codes for something else. We used to call it junk DNA, like, oh, it was an accident of nature that DNA existed. Turns out that that's where all the interesting stuff is happening. And in fact, I fund research into that. Now, we should have known better, because the guy who actually inspired Watson and Crick to go looking for DNA as the fundamental molecule that carried genetic information, Schrodinger, in his book, what is his masterwork, What is Life, talked about the very fact that he believed that DNA at the time, he only saw it as chromosomes, but he was essentially right. He said that it's not just a blueprint. It's not just a blueprint. It's both the architect, but it's also the builder, okay? And we need to understand that. If we're going to be doing things that cure human diseases or do human enhancements, we need to understand that when you monkey around with the human genome, you're not just talking about dealing with good gene, bad gene. You're talking about a complex adaptive system, and you need to have great humility and great respect in dealing with that. So what's our approach? Our approach is we don't bias ourselves into looking for good gene, bad gene. What we do is we say that virtually all genes operate in an orchestra of genes, in a symphony of genes. Okay, so that means that we try to look for patterns within the genome rather than looking for the individual genes themselves. And when we try to affect human disease or try to correct a disease condition, we don't just try to go after the bad gene. What we try to do is actually understand the network of genes and how those networks operate. That's a much more complicated, much more difficult problem, and that's why we bring in some of our best scientists. We call them biocryptographers, because we use cryptographic techniques to crack these codes. We don't just simply look for good gene, bad gene. This is just a once-over-the-world, very highly stylized view of how our experimental approaches within the biochronicity program. Right now, we're fixed and focused on looking at clocking systems within the human genome. And I won't get into why we focused on clocking, but we do. But we carry out massive experiments. And when I mean massive, I'm talking about 100,000 flies at a time. I'm talking about tens of thousands of wells operating and being sampled over multiple days, weeks, and then doing, shotgun sequencing, establishing a first-pass network topology, deriving all over again. And so it's the mashup between big data and big biology. And it's very complicated. The picture there on the left is BioNimbus. That's at the Argonne National Lab, so we make frequent use of our supercomputing facilities with Department of Energy. So we've been able to do things like in 2000, theoretical experiment to kind of prove that math works in biology. We're trying to solve real-world problems. This is one way for me as a DARPA program manager to prove that the math works by applying it to real problems. I'm going to skip the first one because that's kind of, I've already talked about the mathematical methods. We do things like and I also talked about the high throughput experiments, so I'll skip over that. We have experiments into 4D genomics. So we realized very early on in our research that the geometry of the genes relative to each other in space within the nucleus actually has a significant influence over the expression of those genes. And so we've created a field called 4D genomics. We have been able in the laboratory to do targeted arrest of neurodegeneration in fruit flies. I mean, you know, I'm not here to tell you it's ready for prime time in humans, but it's pretty remarkable that we can take a fly with Huntington's disease and arrest the Huntington's disease by targeting its clock networks using RNA interference. We're developing entirely new classes of antimicrobials that don't go directly after good gene, bad gene, or don't directly target a particular factor within the organism, but actually mess with the organism's clocks to slow it down or stop it completely. We're developing new methods to understand how the signaling within the genome, within the DNA itself, how these signaling pathways actually operate and how the genome interacts with its environment. And we're even applying it to the creation of lignocellulosic biofuels because we're interested in saving the planet as well. So back to this issue of, you know, superhuman versus superhumanity. You know, I don't think it's as far apart as necessarily I started in the U.S. currency in your hand. You flip it to the back, you'll see the motto of the United States. Out of many, one. Okay, so I think when we're considering about the enhancement of human beings, we have to consider that it doesn't take place in any one individual. It's within a whole society. This was just my collective list after listening to people yesterday about what I thought were the top topics that I think Bank Inter and the foundation should be thinking about when developing the report and promulgating that. And if you notice, I put number 1, ethics, always, forever, continuously, and without sanctimony, meaning it's not about, you know, some smart ethical person telling you what you should or should not do. The debate should happen within everybody who puts their hands on this topic, and they should do so without being preachy. It should be an open discussion. Public engagement, transparency, and humility. The story about the human genome and what I talked to you about before, the human genome should humble us all. It's a masterwork. The design committee should get great kudos for coming up with it. Experimental biology, I've hit that over the head over and over again. High-performance computing, which we didn't talk that much about, but I think is essential in understanding complex adaptive systems. Next-generation sequencing, signal processing, medicine, if you want to consider that as science. I'm a physician. I don't really think of it much as a science as it is voodoo. Sports and performance science, theoretical mathematics, electrical engineering, biotic, abiotic interfaces, political science, and economics. All of these sciences should come to bear in our discussion about superhuman or superhumanity. And I'll just leave you that. I think this is a wonderful quote, perhaps, that should be included in the report. Always remember that you are absolutely unique, just like everyone else. That's it.
Chris, thanks. So Jeff raised the question of crossing the chasm, and you showed where some of the research you're doing is being applied.
I think that what we're saying is that the fundamental methods have enormous payoffs. So there's a great temptation within the business community, and you know, most of my family is actually far better off than I am because they are bankers and other people. But I think that the investments in the fundamental tools to understand these complex adaptive systems so that you don't get one product out, you get 10 products out of the same investment, right? So it's tempting to go directly after the thing that will give you the shortest term benefit, which is a new widget, a new thing like that. But what we're talking about with our investments in biochronicity is a whole new capability that will have branches and sequels coming off of it. And I think that the mashup between big biology and big data is also going to mean big profits for the companies that get into that. And it's not just Chris Macedonia's idea. I don't know if you guys noticed, but Google kind of dabbled in the healthcare sector for a while, and then they got their hands burned and they stepped back. But about a month and a half ago, they announced a company called Calico, California Life Company. And there was a lot of snickering about it because people were going, oh, yeah, they just want to, these are a bunch of people in California who want, want to have plastic surgery and live for 200 years and so on and so forth. But in fact, if you look under the hood of the Calico program, it's not just about life extension, it's about giving people good quality of life through a Princeton professor. So anyway, I will tell you, I think the investments in the basic mashup between big biology and big data, I believe will be big profits, but of course, history will judge.
Yeah, thanks. Motoki,
Okay.
please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Motoki Nakano from Japan. And I'm from the Kyoto in Japan. There's a beautiful place in the Kyoto. If you have a chance, please visit. And our company, Active Corporation, is in the side of Kyoto, Nara City. And it is a venture corporation, the spin-off fund of Panasonic Corporation. And first, I will show you about the power assist system, exoskeleton in the power loader. Yesterday, we cannot watch the power loader movie, the Alien 2. But I can show you the power loader movie in Japanese style. And the first, power on the power loaders. And this is a so big size of the power loader. And I ride the power loader with the harness with the power loader. And it has 2 arms. And it can lift up the about 100 kilogram some load. And this system has my foot and under the handles. And it has a very strong grip force. It's a side of under. Because it can stand only one. In this movie, I made so many practice. It is hard to work this like this huge system. So maybe we need some stability system to work or bring some huge load. It's working, no hanging, but it is step by step like baby. It's under the develop. Now, this power loader has a weight 230 kilogram, and it hit 1.6 meters. And there are three harnesses to fix the body to power loader, and 2 end effectors, and dedicated chutes for power loader, and 6 axes for sensors. On the other hand, there are right type is a power loader right. This is a technology for development for research or something is okay, but it is so right. The weight capacity is maybe about 30 kilogram but this system has a very special point. it can separate upper body and downward bodies. For example, the side of the left, this picture has the upper body, but this picture has not have upper bodies. It looks like the forklift, and it can lift up the some container or some stones or for building something. Harness. Just fix the foot and just body, not leg the fixed. Mainly, this system is controlled by 8.6 computer system, and this version has 6 actuators. And it can work with 24 volts batteries. It can work like this. Of course, there is a hanging the chain for safety to development. Okay. And next, the features of the power loader. I said the general power switch with the power loader. In a state of emergency case, power switch pilot needs to wear or put off it very quickly. For example, the accident of nuclear power system or power system something. However, okay, let's talk about how to use it and when does it used. Please imagine change your home and you are ready, woman. For example, as a case, please imagine your country is visited by a big earthquake like Japan. Many persons get angry. Neighborhoods, everyone's okay. I can help. But we couldn't. I need more power. So, future of the human, we think, actually populations think